All right, hello guys. Welcome to round 16 of the Scrabble Players Championship 2023. I'm gonna make this a little bit faster of a video. I'm a bit frustrated. The recording kind of screwed up. I just finished take one. I'm usually into doing one takes, and something really terrible happened in the first take. But let's jump into the game. Um, I'm playing Andy Huang. His record is 10-5. So he's one game behind me, but he had no spread whatsoever in this situation. He had under. So let's show the scoreboard. He's not here. I think he was in seventh or eighth place at the time. He just lost to Kevin Fraley, who was in second. Jackson in first still. But Andy had negative spread here, um, and yeah, it's tough when you have negative spread. You basically need to win at all costs. You have to stop worrying. Maybe you want a tie. If you have a tie, you're actually in between records, and it's very unlikely someone will have the exact same record as you if you have a tie. So wanting a tie is actually almost as good as wanting a win. Pretty much the same thing, actually, because unless someone has worse spread than you, you're just going to be behind them in the standings. So yeah, Andy really needing to win here. Um, and yeah, let's jump into it. I think there's nothing I'm forgetting. Yeah, round 16, 11-4, plus 494. So this is my opening rack. I was first, and I decided to play try. There are two other options here. Dry, which sets the S up. Dry is just learned. It is a prohibitionist, so that's why it takes an S. It's a different sort of noun as try, I guess. So it pluralizes with the S. So this is an interesting play. It really sets my S up. It's possible I draw something there. It's not very likely. And I'm keeping two T's, and the M and the T actually don't go well together unless you have an E. And especially if you have an A and an E, then they go well together. But other than that, it's not really that great. You do have four-letter words like MITT or MOTT or MUTT or MATT. Those work, but for bingos, it's not very good. And the other option between those after those two plays is exchanging down to RST. And that's an option that I overlooked. I think it's maybe the best option because exchanging on the first turn like this is usually undervalued by an engine, in my experience, and even by people. I think exchanging on the first turn is an underrated strategy. People really like to cover the star, but sometimes, even if the play you're making is defensive, it's better to exchange. But I like the defense here. I played try. Just leave things a little bit uh, closed if Andy doesn't have a bingo. Andy plays oof, and I draw very nicely into a bingo. I play maddest. He plays bear, and I play inherit. So after just three turns, I am ahead by 123, feeling really, really good. And this was happening a lot this tournament. This is one of the ways I was getting lucky. Just being so far ahead so early, it's very difficult to lose games. But Andy will try. He plays Maw for 35. He actually scores this as 33, and I somehow didn't catch it. I don't know how. I always count my opponent's plays. Pretty good at counting, but maybe I've gotten worse. This keeps happening where opponents are like not scoring their plays properly and I'm not catching it. I don't know, maybe people are worse at math, maybe I'm worse at math, maybe everyone's worse at math, or maybe I'm just being a little bit um, careless. So in this position, I have a few options. I have a pretty nice rack, but there's nowhere great for the J. I could play something like Jam, which doesn't really open anything and doesn't really do anything to the board. It keeps EEIRT, which is decent, but could go wrong. If I draw a couple vowels, I'm really going to be in trouble. There's also the play of jar, but you should never play this because it sets up a huge triple for an A. If Andy has an A, he can score 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 points with it on this triple. There's really no reason to do that. And if you look at Andy's last play of Maw, you can actually gather that he has an A lot more than average, or significantly more than average. Because if you look at the unseen letters, you see 6 O's unseen and 5 A's unseen. So already that's heavier than usual for those two letters. So just based on chance alone. He has an A a bit more than usual and an O a lot more than usual. But if he had an O and only one A, he would definitely have played Mo. There's really not much of a difference between the play of Ma and Mo, other than the O is a worse vowel than the A. So if he had an O and one A, he probably would have played Mo. But if he had two O's, he would have played Mo instead as well. But if he had two A's and an O, that's when he would probably have played Ma instead. So it just makes it a lot likelier that he has an A here. So the play of Jar gets even worse. And the play that I made might actually get even worse. I considered also a very defensive option of Taj, just totally blocking this area of the board and destroying the inherits hook forever. I just didn't like that re-overlaps are possible with the X, with the Z, and EEIR again. It's not a leave I want. When I'm ahead, I really want to keep some options alive. However, I ended up playing G, and the reason I play this is because AEIRT was the best leave that I could keep in the position. And I'm actually setting up my A. But again, with Andy having an A more than average, this might not be worth doing. But I figured that I bingoed a lot with this. Bingo from the M, I could bingo with the 7, and I could bingo with the G. And if Andy doesn't have a bingo, playing a G is really not that great. So here, I played G, maybe a little bit too aggressive. It did work out. Andy played Japer. He did have an A, but he couldn't bingo, luckily for me. And I draw this rack. This looks bad, except there's one bingo material. And again, I'm ahead by 130 points. Andy plays Ox. Really unlucky that he couldn't do anything here for more points with the X. I was able to play Kale for 52. Huge, huge play. And Andy played Eulogia. So he's still in the game, especially given what I just drew. So he's down 80 points, but I have no plays. I have to exchange. And I decided, because there are 11 vowels and 28 consonants, paying attention here, that I would keep 2 vowels, which is very rare, especially if it's an E and an O. An A and an E and an I, maybe. But it's very rare you want to keep an E and an O. And even in this position, the engine gives keeping just the E, which is the standard option, a slight edge over keeping EO. But I think I disagree. I think my play is slightly better, just because it deals with the really bad draws a lot better. I'm okay with having too many vowels because I can then just draw consonants later. But if I have too many consonants, I might not draw vowels later. So if keeping EO and I draw too many consonants, I'll be okay. I'll have some sort of balance. But if I draw 6 consonants next turn, I'm going to be in trouble. Andy's going to be able to score points. I might not be able to, but if I do score points, I might be vowelless. Anyways, seems safer to keep EO. And Andy plays Ivy. And once again, I probably should have paid attention to his play a little bit, because he has Ivy in the top left as well. And that's 32. So it's a 4-point sacrifice, but it blocks a scoring spot, which is something you want to do when you're behind. Doesn't create a scoring spot, which is something you want to do and you don't want to do when you're behind. And it also doesn't block the Japers hook for later as a bingo lane, which is something you don't want to do when you're behind. So these 3 reasons might be enough to sacrifice the 4 points and might give me an inkling to consider whether Andy is going for specific plays or already has very high scoring specific plays at A12, like Quinn, Quid, Zine, Zein, stuff like that, Kaid. So I really wondered if I should have blocked the I when I reviewed this game. I could play something like Coil or even Coin because there are tons of ends left. But instead I went for the points and leave and played Lone for 32. This is definitely not a spot I need to deal with. Sort of like a similar situation to when I could have played Jam and not done anything to the board. But here I might want to address the threats and play through the eye. Luckily for me, Andy has GHIS only. That's not a big deal. And I draw this really, really good rack. There's actually a playable bingo here. Let me know if you can find it. You can pause the video. It is Eroticas for 76. Extremely lucky that that fits. Extremely lucky that I drew it. Andy responds with QI, and he's still in the game. He's down less than 100, and I have this awkward rack, and I made a mistake here. I didn't miss any plays. This was a strategic mistake. The first thing I did was look for plays from the S because those do the best job at outrunning him, at outscoring him. If I'm up 100, it's really hard to lose, and I want to score as much as possible because it's unlikely he'll bingo twice, especially with the board in the state that it is and the unseen letters, but especially the board. So I wanted to score. There's nothing from the S. I was close to something. I wanted to maybe play adopting something through this I and AD, something through this TO. I couldn't find anything. So I decided I'm going to block the biggest threat, which is word starting in L. And I'm going to play bug, keeping NNOP. My hatred of the G took me too far here. I definitely need to play bun instead. Keep the NG combination. It's okay. It's workable. It's much better than keeping the NN. And placing the N or the G here, pretty much similarly threatening. It's good to block the L. I just need to keep PONG. If I draw an E, I get sponge. I can draw a bunch of things. It's just so much more workable as a rack leave. So this is a mistake, a small one, but a significant one that I shouldn't have made. So bug comes down, and Andy plays seized, and suddenly scores are close, and I have this rack. And I made what I thought was an obvious play of nano for 24, bringing me up by 80 points. The engine thinks pan is the right move here. I wholeheartedly disagree. The reasons being, number one, the engine just thinks I'm going ahead by too much. If Andy bingos immediately, he's drawing 4 out of the bag, and I'm winning this game. The engine is wrong. A lot of the time, when Andy has a bingo next turn, he'll realize that it's really difficult to win the game with 4 tiles being drawn. It's obviously a human thing to do, is just to play the bingo if you have it, but Andy is good enough to recognize that the bingo is probably not his best chance and forego the bingo and leave tiles in the bag, score a few points, and try to catch me next turn. So the reason that Quackle likes pan is for a reason that humans will be able to circumvent. And Nano isn't particularly amazing. It does a really good job at destroying the board. There's really nowhere to play after this. It's very difficult to bingo. But 9s are possible. There's maybe some way to open the board a little bit. Not really, but yeah, it's really the 9s that are worth worrying about. So I was aware of this, but I thought this was my best chance. I still think it is. And Andy plays F'd. And in this position, I'm up by what I thought was 57 points. And in this position, I started doing some math. I was like, okay, there are 9s. I don't see 9s. Maybe there are 9s possible with unvoice and blank. I can't open the board with something like Xander for 32. I'm not up enough. If he bingos through this E or making Xanders, he's just going to win, or just unvoiced. There are just many bingos he has, and he's just going to win with a lot of them. And so I can't do this. So I obviously didn't want to do that. I thought about Xanders as well, but still, it's not enough. I'll be up by what I thought was 81. And a lot of the bingos are still going to win for Andy. So then I started doing some math, and I was like, okay, how much does a bingo through this I score if there is one? And before looking for one, I just wanted to do the math to see if I really needed to, because the play I was considering was puns for 27, which I thought was putting me up 84. Bingo here scores 74 points, or 76 if the blank is unseen, but he obviously doesn't have unvoiced plus I, but the math is still the same. His bingo through the I plus the letters that I will have on my rack equals 84. So that would end in a tie if he had something through the I. I was like, okay, well, I don't see anything, but the worst I can do is a tie, right? I was like, well, let me check. So I started recounting the game. I had a lot of time. I recount the game, and I realized Ma was underscored. And when you realize something like this, I think the rules say no matter whose turn it is, you have to stop the clock and say, hey, I think this is the wrong score. Can you check it? Which is what I did. And indeed, the score is 35, and instead I'm up by 55. So what does that mean? That means that if he has a bingo through the eye, he's going to win by 2. And I was really pissed off. I was like, how did I miss this? Why did I waste so much time already? Like, this is ridiculous. And instead of looking for the bingo, those thoughts entered my mind. I'm like, okay, well, let's look again. I eventually looked again. I'm just like, what could he have? It just doesn't look possible. It looks way more possible for him to have a 9 through the EN or through the IN, which will just win on the spot. So I made the play, and my worst mistake of the tournament yet on this turn, I made the play of puns. Now, if he had an E rather than a U, if the U was unseen, which is actually what I was looking at most, because it just, with the U, it just doesn't look possible. He has a playable bingo, and I missed it. I missed it. I had all the time in the world to spot eviction. Normal word, just weird formulation. And I just missed it. Really terrible. And if he had eviction, he would have won by 2 points. I'm so lucky he didn't. It actually turns out, based on what he had the turn before, it was a 1 in 3 chance. So I squandered 33.3333% of games with this play of puns. All I need to do is make a play like unpen or repin, just something that like blocks this eye. And if I'm worried about 9s, at least I'm blocking something. And there are no 9s. The only playable bingo in this position is eviction. And I was extremely lucky. Another reason I was super lucky, that eviction did not come down, and Andy had this rack instead. And before I show the end game, because the game is won, I will show you a video that something that happened earlier in the tournament on stream and reflects what I was talking about earlier, Andy being so low on spread that he just needs to win at all costs, and how far that can take you. There's obviously a limit to everything, but with imperfect knowledge of the dictionary, Andy will make plays like this hilarious one. So let's show it.
I don't know, high loss than she's ever won in.
Lauer. Andy's got to try something to win the game, and I guess he's going to try Lauer. Jackson just like, yeah, I'll challenge that. But yeah,
As far
you take
as
a
Hail
shot.
Marys go, it is on the less pronounceable side.
That is tough. Lauer.
I'm always like, use it in a sentence. My opponent tried to bingo out with Lauer.
Lauer. But take
It
your shot.
sounds like Scooby Doo is trying to say like flower.
So shouts out to Hannah Lieberman and Matt Kanik for the hilarious color commentary there. Of course, there are a bunch of words in the Scrabble dictionary that are very hard to pronounce that are words, but this one just, I mean, it just looks so bad. But yeah, it was his only way to win, or his only way to win was to come up with a word there that used all of his letters. Of course, Lauerer is not even a word. So Lauerer. So it's obviously just hilarious and ridiculous, but I mean, if you're gonna try to win, you're gonna try to win, right? And I mean, everyone has their limit to how hard they try to win a game of Scrabble. Um, Andy was almost limitless because in this position he might have one-upped that phony, which to me is one of the highlights of the tournament and of the stream, but of the tournament when I heard he'd done this, this was amazing. And I mean, it's hard to fault him. I wouldn't have done it. Most of the players in the division wouldn't have done it, but he's trying to win. So it's hard. You gotta admire that. But after this play, it became a little bit less admiring and a little bit more, are you serious? Because Andy played Vucinini. And I can pronounce this word, by the way. It's a lot more pronounceable than Lauerer. But he, at first, he was just like, yeah, well done. He's like, well, I guess I should try something. I have no spread. I'm like, oh no, is this happening again? What is he gonna do? And he starts like, okay, what should I do? What should I make the blank? And I'm like, are you serious? This would win the game if it's a word. It's just not a word. So I challenged it off, of course, and laughed all the way to the bank. Played Eider and won the game by 5-12. Little did I know that I had blundered the game, or potentially blundered the game. And after the game, Andy was like, "Wait, Josh, let's put Vucinini back on the board and just make those guys think." I think it was maybe Jackson was playing next to us or something. Make them think that like I won the game with this. I'm just like, Andy, I don't know. Okay, but like it's not gonna work. So it was pretty ridiculous. That's all I could say. Ended up winning this game. Really, really unhappy when I realized what I had done. But yeah. Anyways, good win, but not really. And I'll show you guys the scoreboard after this game. So I go into second place, and I am 2 games still behind Jackson. Noah Walton in third, Ori Swift in fourth, Kevin Fraley in fifth, Eric Goldstein in sixth. And yeah, next game you can see I'm playing Will Anderson. Get excited. Before I leave you guys, look at the final board. And you just have to trust me. I think maybe many of you will disbelieve that Andy actually played Vucinini. I think if you asked him, he would admit it. I don't think has any shame, nor should he, for trying to win a game of Scrabble, you know? It's just really funny. I've done it before with my famous phonies. It's happened a lot. Here's the final board. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and get ready for a battle of a lifetime, round 17. So let's finalize this after round 16. Whoops. 12 and 4. Oh no. Don't look at that. Let's get rid of that. 12 and 4 with a spread of, I think, 610. I won by 116. So there you go. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.